So the first thing we're going to talk about today is preparing mentally for PCS. And what I think that entails, and I think our team thinks that entails, is making sure that we have enough information to make really informed and well-informed decisions that we at least feel confident about, right? So that's what we're going to be talking about today, are all of the decisions that we're going to be making during a PCS. So helping me tackle this topic, as always, are my MILLIE Scout friends, Megan and Nicole. Hey, ladies, how are y'all today?
Good.
Hey, Kelly.
Super excited to be talking about this. I feel like Nicole jumped on and she was on the phone, and I think she was making some decisions right then and there. So we're like, wrap that decision up and help us make some decisions over here on the Unpack. Okay, so the conversations that we've been having up to this point are all guiding you guys to the decision point, right? So we want to make sure that you're kind of approaching all of this research in a way that makes sense so that when it comes time to make the decisions, you have the information already kind of in your pocket that you can draw from, and you've already started to make some soft decisions along the way, right? And then last week we talked about getting your orders. So getting that green light to go ahead and start lining things up, signing things, making things happen. So I want to today dive into what those key decision points are gonna be. So Megan, why don't you start us off? What's the big one, the first big one that all of us need to be thinking about?
On post versus off post. That's probably the question I get asked the most is, do I live on post? Do I live off post? Bottom line, it's going to look different by your location. Every duty station is going to be completely different. We always take it one duty station at a time. We've lived on post once. Fort Benning, Georgia was our one on post stop. So on post, you're going to lose your BAH, but you're not going to have to worry unless you use like an absorbent amount of water or electricity. You're probably not going to have to worry about utilities. So it's a great way to, I won't say save money, but it kind of makes it a little bit easier. Obviously, you're probably going to be closer to the service members' area of work and all of that. I know when we lived on post, it was nice because he could sneak home for lunch some days. So that was always a great. But then there's also things on post that sometimes prevent us from living on post. For instance, we have 3 cats. We were lucky. Fort Benning accepts 3 animals. So we were within the constraints there. Other posts only will take 2. So it kind of depends on what your situation is. If you have certain breeds of animals, they're not going to be allowed on some posts. If you have too many animals, they're not going to be allowed on post. So that's going to force you to go off post. And off post can look different. It looks different everywhere you are as well, simply because sometimes you as the spouse may want to work and it may be miles away that you have to work. So you need to live a little bit further out. For instance, a lot of people here at Fort Campbell live probably 25 minutes, 25 to 30-minute commute for service member, just so they can work Nashville way. So it just kind of depends on your situation as to whether you're going to live on and off. And like I said, it looks different every post. That was always the first thing we evaluated. On post, you're going to run into the dreaded wait list. When we looked at DC, it was a 1.5-year wait. We didn't have a 1.5-year wait because you got to have orders like we talked about last week before you can go on the wait list. And we didn't have a 1.5 years to wait. I was 5 months pregnant and no way was I waiting that long. So the wait list kind of determines sometimes as well whether you're going to go on and off post.
Yeah, it's really true. And also just understanding like the condition of the houses on post, right? Or on base, excuse me. That's another thing you want to kind of look into, like how old are they? How well have they been maintained? Are there any kind of environmental issues going on that you need to be aware of? That I'm thinking specifically of Hawaii right now. Like these are all things that you need to be aware of headed into the decision, because even though you may have lived on base everywhere up until this point, at a certain duty station, at a certain snapshot in your life, there might be different circumstances that would lead you to living off post being a better option. One other thing, you guys, too, Megan, I know you're gonna have thoughts on this, is just the availability of housing off base, right? So the market's tricky, you guys. One thing that I just want to say is no matter what you've always done, there's not a standard. So just always be open-minded when it comes to your choices. There may not be inventory off the installation where you're headed. So don't rule out living on base and vice versa, given all of those different factors. And again, your own self-assessment. What are your family needs? Go back to episode 1, I think, where we talked about that, right? We did that way up front because we want you guys to know what you need and what your family needs. Nicole, can you talk us through if we've decided to live off base, which, by the way, most people do. Over 70% of military families choose to live off the installation for all of the reasons that Megan just kind of listed, or different, reasons that have to do with each of those variables. What are some things that you need to think about when you're considering whether you should rent or buy off base?
Okay, rent versus buy. We've been on both ends of the spectrum with that. One of the things for us is how long we're going to be at a duty station. Will we have enough time to build equity in a house? That's a key thing to consider and talk over with a realtor. Another thing is how many animals you have. In our case, we have 2 dogs and 2 cats, which is sometimes tricky to rent with. We have been able to rent with 2 dogs and 2 cats, but it can make things tricky. So consider the amount of animals you have, what breeds of animals you have. In this market, rentals are tricky all around, but when you have pets, it's just a whole nother factor to work with in trying to find a rental. Another thing is if you do buy a house, you're in the military, you're going to be leaving it. It's not your forever house in most cases. So are you going to resell the house when you leave? What might the market look like in a year, 2 or 3 years from now? Or are you comfortable with having to rent that house if the market takes a turn and you have a rental on your hands? So you need to think through what you might do if you're going to buy a house. One of the things with renting in this market that you have to consider is a lot of landlords are deciding to sell their houses. So know your lease, know the terms of your lease. That is a risk you have if you're renting. If you own the house, then you have full control of when you're going to PCS out of that house. One other thing I want to mention is that you can totally chase both options. Just be upfront with a realtor, we're not really comfortable. We don't know if we're going to purchase, but we might rent. We did that. We were stationed in Austin and we were we don't know if we're really going to buy or rent. And then we ended up buying a house closer to Fort Hood to be a rental. So you can do that. Just be honest with whoever is helping you. You could also throw yourself on an on-post wait list, chase all 3 options and see how the cards fall into place.
It's never a bad thing to have multiple balls in the air to see which one lands the most comfortably first. Yeah, I like that. I mean, it's just keeping all of those open just in case, because you never know what's going to come to fruition. Where do you guys look? Where are some places that we could guide folks to start discovering those options that are off post?
So military by owner is always, that's usually, if we're looking at renting, that's usually my starting point. Facebook groups are always great. I had somebody last night, we're still looking for a house here. And I had somebody say, hey, I've been watching the Facebook groups for anybody that might be selling. So a lot of times you can throw it out on the Facebook groups and say, hey, we're going to be here at this time. Is anybody happen to be selling? I think we're seeing that more and more in this crazy market, trying to find houses. You're willing to do anything to get it. So if you can ever get a lead on something, it's totally worth it. Then, of course, agents, some markets, agents will touch rentals, some markets they won't. But if you've got a real estate agent, 100% that real estate agent, if you're pursuing buying, is a great way to get your intel. You'll see our Agent Hero segment here in just a little while. We have our Agent Heroes. They're Agent Heroes for a reason. They understand military life and they're there to help you. So use them. That's pretty much the best place to start, in my opinion. Nicole probably knows more than I do on that, though.
Yeah, I would say the Facebook groups are probably a key one. You can also check apartments.com, Zillow. Realtor will have some rentals. And if you figure out who the bigger rental companies are, where you're headed, check theirs. Because in this current season we're in, some rentals never hit. They never hit Zillow or anything. They're rented the day that they get listed. So be familiar with your big name rental companies and look directly on their sites.
Yeah, and not only the military spouse groups, but also try to figure out what the local neighborhood groups are. I mean, sometimes they're kind of hard to get into, but if you can lean on your network, hey, I'd love to get in on this neighborhood. I know our neighborhood here is all word of mouth. I mean, and a lot of them are. So just kind of put yourself out there. I know it feels weird to be I need home, but it's true. Sometimes you just kind of have to. And a lot of times those houses just turn over, they just change hands without even ever being listed. So just, especially if you guys are new to this, don't be afraid to ask those questions and ask people if they know people, right? It's not just 1 degree. It's typically 2-3 degrees of someone that will help kind of find you the hookup. Use all of these tools, y'all. You're going to need every single one of them this year, probably. So don't lose heart. Just, figure out what are the questions you need to be asking, who are the people you need to be asking, and just make sure that, you're just keeping your options open always. Let's talk about what you need to take with you to reinforce all of these decisions. Because I don't know about y'all, like often I'm like, okay, I made a decision, going with it. And then either I wake up the next morning and I forget the decision I made, or I forget why I made the decision to begin with, or I just need a little bit more like reassurance or evidence, to support my decision. So let's talk about that PCS binder.
Yes, you're going to want your PCS binder. Inside your PCS binder are all your inventory sheets from the moving company. If you've already signed a lease for where you're headed, make sure you have a copy of your signed lease with you. If you are if you're even considering buying a house, like you would have already met with a lender to get pre-approved, ask them what documents you'll need. Typically, you're going to hand carry all of those documents you're going to need anyways, but you need to provide a lot of documents to the mortgage company when you close. So make sure you have everything you're going to need hand carried with you. And then all your receipts, like if you're doing a partial ditty or anything, like have all your receipts, have a spot in your binder for all of your receipts for your move.
Yeah, again, I forget. Like, why did we say we were going to ditty? Oh, it's because we're going to get this much on the back end, right? Like, you just have to remind yourself sometimes, like, oh, this is why we did that. And like, even I would take it as far to say, like, if you and your spouse are in agreement, make sure that you document that agreement so that it doesn't come back around later on. Anything else you guys want to add when it comes to decision making?
Make your plan and go with it.
Yeah.
Stick with it. It works out in the end. And just organization, and I am so not the person to be saying this because organization is not my thing, but organization and all of it is key. And just in this market, just be prepared. It's a ride, but it can be done. It is being done every day, and you will find something.
Yeah. And never forget too, you've got folks, right? Either your friends, your networks. You've also got MILLIE Scouts that you can enlist and hire to help you, provide you evidence, right? Information. We call them fact finders for a reason. They're helping support the decisions that you ultimately need to make. And often you're making them from far away, under a lot of stress, compressed timelines, all the things, right? So we're trying to provide you with as much support as we possibly can. So use it, right? Okay. All right, hang out, you guys. I'll talk to you in just a bit.